Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dal, and this week in Dragonflight Alpha we got a brand new build. With that we got the Zone of Ringing Deeps for us to level and quest through, as well as 2 new dungeons and 1 new delve for us to dive into. But also this update brought with it plenty of new class changes, or rather spec specific changes, as we did get new adjustments but in limited quantity, with certain playstyles highlighted such as the Affliction Warlock, the Fire Mage, the Demon Hunter hero spec, as well as some of the other minor class adjustments that are available in this update. As part of our ongoing class overview for the War Within Alpha, I wanted to cover the spec of Fire Mage specifically, because this spec has gotten yet another talent revamp as of this earliest alpha build. It definitely does feel like Fire Mages have been going through quite a number of changes over the last few expansions, but this change is hoping to improve the overall playstyle quality by giving Fire Mages even more ways to customize how they want to do AoE and cleave damage, so they can better customize the build for a number of combat situations. So for today's video, I really wanted to do a deeper dive at some of the Fire Mage changes arriving with the War Within Alpha. But right before we get into this update video, most of you guys watching these are still not subscribed. However, the more of you remind, the more of you do, so let's keep it going. Subscribe to the channel and ring the bell if you're watching these videos anyway. Especially if you want to get more regular content regarding Dragonflight patch 10.26, 10.7, Season 4, or any of the future War Within updates. Before diving into Fire Mages specifically, I first want to go over some of the general changes planned for the Mage class in the War Within. The devs are looking to accomplish a handful of goals for mages for this expansion, the first of which is to allow mages to acquire the core gameplay aspects of each and one of their specs with minimal talent point investments. At the end of the day, mages should feel like they have plenty of talent points to spend to augment their playstyles in a variety of different ways. But all those things that make up the core of Fire, Frost, and Arcane should be pretty easy to acquire. Next, they also want to simplify some of the rotational complexity. It doesn't necessarily mean simplify the rotation, but more or less reduce some of the complexity for the top end of every one of the playstyles. They also want to provide them with better tools to help them adapt their damage profiles to match a number of encounters, and also providing more competitive talent choices that let you opt out of complex gameplay. As for the base Mage class talents, the first major change we're seeing is the removal of the Temporal Warp, which is the double Bloodlust talent. The devs are unhappy with the significant amount of APM requirements that it creates, and for the mages that are failing to meet the checks required to create some of the biggest combos during the double Bloodlust windows, can quickly snowball them substantially, reducing the overall damage over the course of an entire encounter, though mages will be tuned accordingly with these changes in mind. As for the specs like Arcane and Frost, we don't necessarily have talent changes available in this build, but more is yet to come. For Archimages, we have things like their inherent complexity regarding mana management, as it's the only spec that essentially actually uses the mana as an actual resource for gameplay, though that complexity isn't well represented in their talent tree as of this moment. Radiant Spark will also be redesigned to be a little bit simpler to use, and will have another competitive choice for people that don't really like that scripted type of gameplay that Radiant offers. They're also looking to increase the power of Arcane's procs and giving them even more exciting procs to play with, so the rotation of Arcane Mages will likely evolve. As for the spec of Frost, for the most part, they're very happy with the way that it worked out over the last few expansions. The spec feels fun and fairly easy to pick up for newer players, though they do wish to recreate a Deathborn playstyle that was developed back in Shadowlands and find some ways to free up some of their talent choices to give him even more build capabilities. And now we can actually talk about Fire Mages. With Fire, the devs are hoping to give them more ways to adjust their rotation through various talents to better suit their profiles to increase the value of things like Flame Strike, Phoenix Flames, as well as Living Bomb. This change is also going to push out the Ignite spread as the primary ability for AoE, kinda out of the default, so that mages have better customization of which playstyle they better prefer. Sun King's Blessing ended up being a very powerful capstone that makes up the core of every mage playstyle. The long and short of it is overshadowing Unleashed Inferno, and both talents are being tuned to make him a bit more competitive against one another. Also, Fire Mage has a lot of maintenance buffs for one player to track, so they're wishing to simplify some of that aspect for the spec specifically. As part of the Fire Mage talent rework, we have a flurry of new talents, starting off with Lit Fuse, which is how you're going to apply Living Bomb to enemy targets. Consuming a hot streak has a small chance to grant you Lit Fuse. Lit Fuse makes your next Phoenix Flames apply a Living Bomb to up to 3 enemy targets. Living Bombs will explode after a few seconds, dealing damage to the target and up to 5 nearby enemies with a soft cap. Up to 5 enemies hit by the explosion will also spread Living Bomb, but then afterwards it doesn't spread any further. To help develop this Lit Fuse playstyle even further, Explosive Ingenuity allows you to consume hot streaks for a higher chance to grant you Lit Fuse, and Living Bomb damage is also being further increased. Down in Flames will be a new choice with improved Scorch, which allows Scorch to deal 300% more damage against low health targets, where on the other flip side, improved Scorch will debuff the target to make him more vulnerable to fire damage. So it essentially becomes a choice between hitting harder with Scorch or debuffing your target. Another new talent of Quick Flame basically buffs up the output of your Flame Strike, and it's on the same choice node as Flame Patch. Another new talent of Focused Fury, where Living Bombs will deal more damage against fewer targets and up to 300% more damage to a singular foe. When it comes to resources, we have Spontaneous Combustion, which is going to be a choice node with improved combustion. Both of these talents help you recuperate Fire Blast and Phoenix Flames, but whereas improved combustion does it over time, Spontaneous Combustion instantly refreshes 3 charges of Fire Blast and 3 charges of Phoenix Flames. Another new talent of Charring Embers allows Phoenix Flames to apply Charring Embers to all enemies, a tier set bonus which was added back in Dragonflight. Enemies with Charring Embers take 5% additional damage from the Mage for 12 seconds. Another piece of this tier set combo is the Phoenix Reborn talent, which allows your direct damage and abilities to enemies with Charred Embers to help you build up a buff. And once you have enough stacks of that buff, your next 2 Phoenix Flames are empowered, doing 200% more damage, and they also each refund a charge upon use. Fire's Ire allows you to gain additional critical strike chance outside of combustion, or critical strike damage inside of combustion. With Explosivo, casting Combustion grants Lit Fuse, and while under the effects of combustion, Hot Streak has a substantially increased chance to grant you Lit Fuse procs. Blast Zone further buffs that talent by allowing Lit Fuse to apply Living Bomb up to 5 targets, and then Living Bomb can spread up to 8 targets afterwards. A new talent of Ashen Feather allows Phoenix Flames to be empowered when it strikes against one target, increasing its damage but also increasing its mastery value. And then we have the reverse of that Majesty of the Phoenix. When Phoenix Flame strikes 3 or more targets at a time, it causes your next 2 Flame Strikes to have the cast time reduced and damage buffed by 20%. But we're not even close to being done, as we have a number of redesigned talents also, with Flame Accelerant not only increasing the cast time of your Fireball, but now also affecting Flame Strike and Pyroblast. Unleashed Inferno causes your Fire Blast, Fireball, Scorch, and Phoenix Flames to deal 50% more damage and reduce the cooldown of Combust by 1.25 seconds. While Combust is active, Flame Strike is also empowered by 25% more damage, and Flame Strike reduces the cooldown of Combustion by 0.25 seconds for each critical strike, up to 1.25 seconds maximum. Convection will buff Living Bomb in single target. For whenever Living Bomb expires, if it does not spread to another target, its effect is instead refreshes on your current target, but only once. Pyromaniac is a talent that's not ready for testing, but it allows casting Pyroblast or Flame Strike with a hot streak, and 8% chance to duplicate that spell's effect at 100% effectiveness, though the copied effect does not contribute to hot streak or any other procs. And besides all of that, we have a bunch of Fire Mage specific talents being reworked into a single talent point cost to make it much easier for a Fire Mage to pick up all of these new talents and fully customize the build, which you really do get to feel in the War Within Alpha. And of course, I took all of these talents into dungeons and in the open world content to test them out. And from my time testing, I noted a couple of things, starting with the Living Bomb. The damage of Living Bomb, as of this current build, seems a little bit on the lower end, especially after recently testing out Warlocks. But the playstyle of Living Bomb and its changes does have potential. There's a lot of different talents that interact with the way you apply and refresh and spread Living Bomb, and the way that you can even force Living Bomb on enemies thanks to the Mage's hero talents is also just as exciting, whether you end up playing the Frostfire to get Living Bombs from things like Excess Fire or from additional Lit Fuse procs that you can collect as a Sunfury spec. The ability of Flame Strike got a little bit more love in this recent alpha build, which I think is nice to see. It does feel like that they're really trying to work on the ability and really trying to make it part of the Mage's base rotation. Letting Flame Strikes interact with the Fire Mage's mastery in AoE is also good, and letting Flame Strike do more instant, continuous damage I think will make the ability feel stronger, and giving Flame Strike additional opportunity to be quick cast from other spells I think is going to help incorporate it a little, though from my time spent testing on the alpha, I still had a hard time enjoying using Flame Strike and Flame Strike oriented builds. At least when compared to a single target focused Pyroblast builds that allow your mastery to slowly singe all enemies around you, and being able to incorporate Phoenix Flames and Living Bombs on top of it made me feel like I really wanted to invest more time into the Pyroblasty builds rather than the Flame Strike builds. There's just a core component missing from Flame Strike. It's almost there and almost feels just as satisfying, and maybe it may come down to just my inexperience with the Mage and finding the right build to make it work, but for me, for the time being, I found Flame Strike fun, but not as good as some of the more Pyroblasty single target builds, at least when it comes to that personal enjoyment. Next, I want to quickly touch upon the Fire Mage hero specs. And when it comes to hero talents for mages as well as other classes, I plan on doing separate videos for each class to really get into the details and the depth behind all of the hero specs, what I like about their gameplay, as well as some of the thematics for each and every single one of them. But I do want to briefly go over how it felt to play the Sunfury and the Frostfire Mage with some of the different builds that I was able to put together for Fire Mage. And off the bat, Sunfury feels like it fits the Fire Mage aesthetic perfectly. Every time you use your major combat ability, you will summon a Phoenix to chaotically cast spells in every direction. I love the Phoenix for the most part, and I love the randomness of this bird, and watching it just chucking greater pyros at the boss into the dirt is super cathartic every single time you unleash him. But I do hope that the bird will have some more added focus in the future, because I feel like it could be very much prone to attacking crowd control targets in PvP, or focusing down wrong enemy targets in a very hectic boss encounter. So hopefully the bird will follow up the mage's priority targets a little bit better in the future, because right now it's just chaos incarnate. Besides the Phoenix, the hero spec easily complements everything about the Fire Mage, from additional secondary stats, to causing your Phoenix Flames to summon meteorites to give you cooldown reduction on Fire Blast, extending the duration of your combustion, and even providing you with a hyperthermia buff following the end of a combustion window. All in all, it felt very flexible to play with and worked out with just about any kind of build. The Sunfury complements the Fire Mage to a T, and it feels like it's a match made in heaven. As for the Frostfire hero spec, your primary ability is the Frostfire Bolt, which replaces your Fireball, or rather your Frostbolt, as a Fire Mage. Frostfire Bolt has a chance to become supercharged, making it an instant cast and cause an AoE damage around your target. It has a few unique interactions between fire and frost spells as either fire or the frost specs. And while I haven't been able to explore this hero playstyle in greater depth as Fire, I was able to discover a very interesting instant cast focused build that actually worked really well when it comes to Fire Mage gameplay. Similar to the single target build that is focused on spreading mastery burns through Pyroblast and cleaving enemy targets, this build does exactly the same, but this version feels so much smoother to play with. That is because the sheer number of guaranteed critical procs and instant casts that you can funnel out almost indefinitely, only slowing down to cast a Pyroblast to proc combustion once the Sun King's talent procs have been properly achieved. This creates a fun and an easy gameplay loop where the player simply hits the ability that is currently glowing. As it is an early alpha build, it is very hard to pin down exactly how this playstyle will perform when it comes to endgame content or damage, since none of the numbers on the alpha are final, but the playstyle overall feels very good to play, and surprisingly so, has a unique flow to it where you can weave abilities in between of each crit combo, adjusting the priority of your skills on the fly, where you'll be able to spam out fresh charges of Phoenix Flames while Fire Blast charges cool off, and then vice versa. I should also mention that the gear that we're given on the alpha is very subpar for our level, meaning that I'm only able to maintain this chain rotation while using some of the least optimized stats for my spec. And you can only imagine just how smooth this playstyle is going to feel once you actually have very decent character on an experienced mage. Overall, I found it quite surprising that this build actually worked, and the synergy and the flow and the stats that it provides was actually super fun and very interactive. Honestly, it felt that the Frostfire Mage for Fire Mage was initially going to incorporate your Fireball, or this augmented version of Frostfire Bolt, as your primary skill to funnel out as much as possible, but you basically end up doing the same thing you do as a mage with Pyroblast and Fire Blast, but weaving in those procs in between, and the way that Fire and Frost abilities interact with one another actually made it for a very exciting damage rotation. And with that, that's going to be everything we got so far regarding the newest talent rework for the spec of Fire Mage. Sometimes it really does feel like the Fire Mage, out of all the different class specs, has gotten the most amount of changes over the last few expansions, and it looks like War Within is not going to be different. Overall, I very much like the changes they've done so far. I think a lot of them have potential. While I did find it a little bit difficult for me to really fully lean into things such as Flame Strike, the changes to Living Bomb, as well as some of the newer talents and newer gameplay options, as well as the hero talents, I think all help to create new synergies and make some viable builds for the class. Of course, tuning is something that is going to be an ongoing process, and I can't really talk about the performance of this playstyle, but it does feel good to pick up in the War Within Alpha. I want to thank all of you guys so much for watching this video, and I hope all of you enjoyed. Let me know what your thoughts are about Fire Mages in the War Within Alpha in the comments down below. As per usual, if you guys enjoyed this video or found it informative, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. I would very much appreciate it. And as always, in the description of every single video and live stream, we have a link to our Discord community channel. Probably the best place to reach out to me directly in case you want to let me know what you thought about this video or hang out with the rest of the community to discuss some of the upcoming changes. Join our Discord to become part of the community. But otherwise, thank you all so much for watching this video. I do hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know all of your thoughts down below. And as always, I'll see all of you guys in another video.